Do you have diabetes, or do you know someone who might have diabetes? If this is the first time you've joined us here, please consider hitting that subscribe, that like, and also share and comment on this video. So let's think about this. How can we change our habits? How can we shift ourselves and our mindset from doing one thing to another? And I'll tell you for free, willpower never lasts, right? So many people have tried willpower, including myself. I've tried to change my habits and I've failed, right? I'll do it for a certain amount of time, but then I fall back into the same bad habits. I tried for ages, for example, to stop eating chips, and unfortunately, I just kept going back to it. There is something though now that I've used that has absolutely stopped my cravings completely for chips, and so I never go back to it. So the number one thing that you want to focus on is your why. Why do you want to stop doing a certain thing? So for example, with sugar levels and with the eyes, why is it that you want to look after your sugar better? Is it because you're scared, you don't want to go blind, you don't want to lose your limbs, you don't want to lose your fingers, toes, those kind of things? Because that is what we call a push. In fact, what's better is if you have a pull. So it means you want to maintain the health of your eyes so that you can see the beauty around you, so that you can see your kids' smiles, you can see your grandkids play, that you can read books in your older age. So now I want you to think about your outcome. What is it that you want to get out of having good sugar level control? You want to be able to sleep better at night, not having to get up to go to the toilet? Do you want to be able to read when you get older? Do you want to be able to walk 30 minutes without getting tired? So what is the outcome that you're wanting to achieve? So just keep that focused. If you are focused on your outcome, then there's a higher chance that you're going to be doing the right things to be able to get there. And now you want to think about what are the small things that you need to do to be able to reach your outcome. Basic example, if you're drinking coffee and you take milk in there, just remember to reduce how much milk you're having progressively, just slowly. And by doing it slowly and gradually, before you know it, you'll be doing yourself a favor in that aspect as well. So even for me, I used to have milky coffees. Now when I'm at home, I'll just have a black coffee, and that took time. I slowly went down lower and lower in what quantity of milk that I had, and that's something that you can implement, and it will help you there. With this approach, remember, what gets measured can get improved. So in the same way, if you're diabetic and your sugar levels are fluctuating from 6 to 7, that's not so bad. But if you're fluctuating 11 to 12, that's a little bit higher, then you want to just make sure that you are regularly checking yourself. You see, over the years, the most common finding that I had in people was those people who controlled their sugars well were the ones who regularly checked it. So twice a day, they'd be checking their sugar levels. Those people who would check it once every 3 months, they're the ones whose sugars were elevated, and those are the ones whose GPs were constantly on their case trying to help them to reduce it. So by measuring it daily, you're going to get better results. In the same way, check in with yourself, with your goal, with your outcome that you're after. What was my outcome? Right. What kind of things did I have to do to be able to get there? Did I have to have less milk in my coffee? Did I have to go for 10-minute walks? So just make sure you are hitting those things that are on your list on a regular basis. I'm going to talk to you a little bit more now on what could go on that list to help you better that sugar control. So the first thing is when you go to a restaurant, order less food. It sounds simple, but rather than getting a starter as a main and a dessert, maybe you miss the starter and you do get the dessert instead, or you flip it around. So just ordering less when you go out, and instead of having the fizzy drink, which is the easy option there, ask for water or ask for something else, which is going to be, or a fresh fruit juice, which is going to be better than having that sugary drink there. Also, there's a research study that I read recently that was done at Deakin University. And what they found is if you had a smaller plate, then you'll have less that you put on that plate. And those people actually had better sugar control. So simply by changing the size of your dinner plate can actually improve your sugar control. So that's something you can immediately change from right now. So from this evening, so every time you eat dinner, just have a smaller plate, and that's really going to serve you. There's also a lot of information that I've come across recently that I've read and listened to which suggests fasting is actually a good way to be able to get rid of a lot of those carbohydrates, because when we fast, our body is using up the storage that we have of carbohydrates. So making sure that on a regular basis you do fast, but maybe not to the extent of some people's recommendation, which is like too much. Just go with what is right for you, but do adopt some form of a fasting system, and also looking at dietary intake as well. So not saying that you should all suddenly change to a vegan diet, but if you can go to a vegetarian or a vegan diet, it certainly does help. But you've got to make sure that you're feeding your muscles at the same time, so you do have your protein as well. The biggest risk here is if you do not get things in the right balance, you can become malnourished. So having your protein is super important, and then also having your green leafy veg and your other things there. So important to get that balance right. Now, another important one is to avoid snacking. Remember, snacking is really, really bad. This is where the body then, unfortunately, doesn't go and use its reserves and the carbohydrates. It uses what you've just put in your mouth. So that fasting thing is important. Avoid snacking. Like I had to get rid of having those chips. Remember what is your why. Remember what is the outcome that you're asking for, and those steps that you need to take place. Measure yourself on a daily basis, and you can get off whatever bad habit that you have. Now, I also had a lot of patients who were trying different things to be able to figure out what works, what doesn't work. And it's really important to do that because, like we said, no diet is universal, no diet is eternal. So try something, change something. Remove one thing from your diet. For example, if you're someone who eats a lot of rice, drop that rice by half. Measure your sugars for the next week. Remember, want to change things one step at a time. So if, let's say, you're eating a lot of rice and then you decrease the amount of rice, you want to measure it, how you're going over that week. Unless you're pricking your finger on a regular basis, you're not going to be able to monitor that. And you might suddenly discover that just by reducing the amount of certain type of food, which you didn't expect, suddenly that's the thing that's going to really help you control your sugars as much as possible. Also, it comes to what time of day you're eating as well, and the volume of food as well. But remember, again, that protein intake has to be there to make sure you're getting the right nourishment for your muscles. The other thing is, make sure you reduce foods that are high in fat content. So that's going to be things like your fast food, and then also ready meals and things that are readily available from the supermarket. A lot of frozen foods that we just put in the oven, unfortunately, they're not going to have the right kind of levels of nutrients and things that you need when we're diabetic. And unfortunately, bad for your sugar control there. The other thing to be mindful of is if your sugars are high and you're bringing them down, if you bring them too quickly, that's a bit of a problem. You just got to be really careful that if they go too fast, that has more of a negative effect. And we found that more people have diabetic retinopathy, which is bleeding and swelling at the back of the eye, if it goes too quickly. Unfortunately, I've had patients who were at the levels of about 15% HbA1c going down to about the 7%, and they do it in the space of about 2 months to 3 months because their GP told them to, or their GP put them on a certain medication or an injection. And as a result of that, it looks great on paper, but that person comes in with diabetic retinopathy. And that's been proven now to be a big no-no. So be very careful of going too quickly. It's going to be gradual over months, and not all GPs are aware of this, so please bring this up with them. That this is now the finding, that you have to go gradually over the time and bring it down slowly. If your sugars do rapidly change very quickly, think of it like this. Your blood vessels are like a hose pipe, okay? So you've got a cell wall around the blood vessel. So that's like saying there's a wall around the hose pipe. Now that, if you turn on the tap and the water goes through the hose pipe, that water rushes through. If you've got a thick wall, everything stays within the hose pipe. But if that wall is thin, then that fluid that goes through the hose pipe, guess what? It's going to leak out. And when it leaks out, that's all the blood plasma, and that's the blood that seeps around everywhere in your body. So you can be really mindful that we don't want to have a thin wall. And that is what diabetes does. It thins the wall of the blood vessel. So the faster you change your sugars from high to low, the faster that cell wall becomes thinner, and then greater chance of diabetic retinopathy. The next thing is to exercise frequently. So every day, if you just go for a 30-minute walk, that's not quite enough. We now know that you've got to split that exercise up during the day. So several moments during the day, get up, do some exercises, move your hands, do some exercises, and then do some yoga, do some breathing techniques, all those various things, and move your body. And that's good throughout the day. So like my smartwatch now, it has reminders that comes up. And so every 1 hour, if I'm sitting still behind a computer or whatever I'm doing, it will flag that I need to move. So that's a great thing. If you don't have a smartwatch, that's okay. Put it on your phone, put it as a reminder somewhere that every 1 hour it will beep, and that serves as a stimulus to be able to get yourself moving again. Be mindful of how much technology you're consuming before bedtime, especially 2 hours before sleep. Don't use any devices, because if you do, it keeps your brain awake, unfortunately, and it messes with that circadian cycle that we normally have. Now, in that cycle, deep sleep is the most important. Deep sleep is where our body, our tissues, and our brain regenerates itself and it heals. So especially in our blood vessels, if we're diabetic and in those blood vessels we're having problems, that deep sleep is where repair generally takes place in the body. So make sure you allow yourself to get into that state of sleep. Again, there's technologies on your phone and on your watch that sometimes can record into that when you're going through these cycles, and you can measure to see how your sleep cycle's going. And then from there, you can actually improve your situation, change certain habits, do meditation before bed, and certain things, breathing techniques that allow you to get into that deep sleep. So that's something I probably suggest there as well. So this next one is my favorite one. There is a lot of research on this topic that I'm about to tell you, and there's research papers on it, so by all means go and have a look at them. But one of the biggest things that happens in diabetics is the amount of oxygen that's flowing within the body depletes. It massively comes down. And when the oxygen levels drop, then the body then has to create certain chemicals to allow blood vessels to form and oxygenate the eye again. There's this thing called VEGF. VEGF stands for vascular endothelial growth factors. Now, VEGF is one of the main reasons why tiny little blood vessels grow, and in order to supply the tissues of the retina and also around the body with oxygen, because that oxygen flow is not good enough. And so hence it has to create new methods, which are these blood vessels, to allow it to oxygenate the eye or the body again. In diabetics who have problems at the back of the eye and they have blood vessels growing, at the back of the eye, there's swelling that takes place and there's leakage of fluid. Now, what they found is two things. Number one is by oxygenating the human being, oxygenating the person by putting on a mask, and they did this for 3 months on people, they found that that swelling at the back of the eye decreased simply by giving them oxygen. No medication, no nothing, just oxygen. So it's a very simple case. Oxygen in your body is really important to help reduce the signs of diabetes. That was number one. Number two, that second thing they found is by giving a lot of oxygen, there was less of a need of those very tiny blood vessels to grow. And those are the bad ones. Those small blood vessels are the ones that cause the biggest sight-threatening issues in our eyes. So those are not good. And therefore, again, avoidable by increasing the amount of oxygen flow. So what I'm going to do is create another video for you, and in that it's going to show you how to increase your oxygen flow just by your breathing, and it'll be a guided breathing exercise. Okay, so I'll put the link up for that as well, so you can follow that. Now, if you look at the Indian culture, there are certain things that are really useful to help bring down the sugar levels. One of those is mango leaves, and the other one is neem leaves. There's another one which is called Kerala, is what it's called in India, but in the rest of the world it's called gourd. Also, ginger is fantastic as well. Ginger is a really great one, as is fenugreek, cinnamon, and aloe vera. So you want to try and think, how can you bring all these on a regular basis into your diet? One of the ways I bring cinnamon into mine is when I make my coffee at home, I put a little bit of cinnamon bark just in there. Adds a bit of flavor, but it's also helping me get that cinnamon into my diet. Fenugreek at night time, just pop in some of those little fenugreek seeds into water, let it soak overnight, and in the morning drink that water. That's another great way. I do that every night. But the super one here to consider is gourd. Now I'm going to go over gourd later on, but remember what that is. So let's take a look now at the Chinese way of looking after their diabetes. This is an approach that's been going on for thousands of years, and they utilize a view of acupuncture, medicine, diet, mind and body connections like Tai Chi and massage, and they believe in having balance within and with nature. So this is where we talk about that thing I showed you right at the start, gourd. Gourd is this superfood which is known to massively change and impact people's sugar levels. So in India, it's called Kerala. In Japan, it's called Nigori. In Philippines, Ampalaya. And it's called Kugua throughout China. It has a rich amount of antioxidants, flavonoids, polyphenols, saponins, and terpenoids. And that's thought to be able to move the glucose from the blood across into the cell, while also helping your liver and your muscles better process and store glucose. It's also rich in many vitamins and minerals. So you got vitamin A, vitamin C, calcium, iron, vitamin B1, B2, riboflavin, which is that B2, is amazing for the eyes, B3, B9, potassium, zinc, phosphorus, and magnesium. And with all those, it's also actually very good for eye floaters. If you want to know more about eye floaters and foods that are good for those, you can follow that other video as well that I've done, and there's plenty of information. If you got something of value from this, and I look forward to catching up with you guys again soon. If there's anything you want to add or anything of this that you try or you already do, leave a comment below. It'll be great to share it with everyone in the group. Do you already use gourd? I'd love to hear. Have you already started having that in your diet? What impact has it made? How do you cook it? What kind of things do you make out of it? I'd love to know, and so would our community. So pop that in there and look forward to seeing you on the next video. Thanks so much.